So that means the user can make the or create the groups to chat like we make the groups in WhatsApp, and also they can chat privately that we chat with our friends one-to-one basis, right? Then again, user should be able to have text chats that they can break into threads. So now in fact I can make different chat groups, or I can have different kind of text chats, and I can make thread of them, groups of them. This is political thread, this is maybe some funny stuff or something, so user can also make those, right? And then the application should be able to handle group video and chat of up to 100 users at a time. Remember one thing, as we told that we are talking about the companies, we are talking about the corporate sector. So now this option is very much required there, that they want to have a video chat, video conferencing, right? So this application about which it is describing, so we are getting the knowledge that it will be able to provide the video chat of 100 users at a time. So this is the functionality. But again, let me explain, you people should write down the each component. There should be more than one components, right? Two, three, four, those can be like this. Then you will describe the first component, its functionality, second component, its functionality, third component, and that then its functionality, right? And so on. And next thing is platform. In fact, when we develop any application, we write down about its for example, technology or tool name. So now the application will be developed in React Native. It is a language, it is a framework to enable the creation of a web-based application. So now we are being informed that which software or which environment, like you know about the Visual Studio. So Visual Studio will be used to create the web-based, although we use Java or something else, but I'm just giving you the name because you know and you are working nowadays in Visual Studio. So that application will be created in that. And what they are going to do, so now check, an iOS, that is iPhone operating system mobile application, as well as Android mobile app. So that means it is going to create an application that will run on two platforms. Number one is that it will run on iPhones, and number two, it will run on the Android normal phones, right? So it is telling us about the platform. And then again, these application will connect to a REST API. In fact, we have different kind of functions, okay? In fact, those are piece of interfaces, that is application programming interface. That means we will create in .NET language to some API, application programming interface. I can give you example of API in a manner. For example, we are dealing with an application that tells us about the weather, right? So now my application or on my mobile will get the data from the server. There is a server that keeps the data about the weather. So how my software talks to that server, and server sends back me the data. So there are small applications interfaces. So in fact, APIs are those functions, those applications, those interfaces, those piece of code, those programs that in fact take my request, and then they have got the protocols, they know how to send it to the server and how server will send them the information. So in fact, it is telling us about those APIs. So why that API would be used? To store and retrieve data from a MySQL database. So there will be a database, a container of MySQL. MySQL is in fact the name of the DBMS in which they are going to put the data, right? So they will store data in it and they will retrieve from that, and in order to get the data from that database, they will use the APIs, and APIs will bring or store the data. Next thing is authentication will be through existing LDAP installations. So they are using some authentication techniques, that you are the authentic user, that you can get the data, you can access the data, you can use the services provided by that e-chat. So in fact that will be done with the help of these platform, right? Development responsibilities, who is going to do what, right? So it is giving us some information about who will be responsible for the requirement and design, as I told you in the class. So now check, the developers on the e-chat team will be responsible for writing all the code. Let me explain: designing, coding, testing, and everything, right? And developing the database, managing the releases, deployment, So in fact, it is giving us a very, very short detail or short information. That is who is going to design, and we have much detailed things when we are going to make a detailed document, that these many people will be responsible for the designing, these people will be responsible for the coding, and these will be responsible for the testing, these will be responsible for the deployment, and even maintenance. So we write down everything. Then user class and characteristics. Another thing, as I told you, there can be many kind of users. I told you that when we make some software of a university, there are many kind of users, like students, teachers, administrators, exam. So now check, there will be a class of users called admin, right? So it is going to make few classes, I think, that will have permission to access all functionality, right? So he's telling us that there is a class that will be the admin class, some super user who can do what? He can do, like, he can create channels where multiple users can interact, right? Like the groups. Then making these channels public to the entire company or private for a group of people. Again, it is telling us those people who are admin, only they can make the channel, and then they can make the channel either public, that is the whole company will be using that channel and they will be communicating on that channel, or for a specific group, for example testing group, for example marketing group, like this. Then this class, that admin, he or she can that role or that person can delete these channels, they can archive, they can put them or record them at some safe place in the hard disk or some backup server. So in fact these are the things that will be done by the admin. And now I can see here standard user, that means the general users of that company, that organization, will have access to all functionalities of the app except those listed above. So instead of telling the other that they can chat and they can send the pictures, designs, and everything, so it is just telling us in one line that they will be able to do everything other than these four things. That means the super user that we are calling admin can do all these things and the other things that the standard user can do. But standard user can do everything but not these specific things. So it is in fact the features of different classes of users. And now we are moving towards the system features, right? So now here we have to describe the functionalities. I told you about the data and the functions and behavior. So now let's talk about the system features, functional requirements. Users should be able to create ad hoc chat groups comprising sets of users and send private message to other users. So that means every user can create the chat groups, they can delete the chat ad hoc, right? Temporary. They can make the groups, right? And then they can add the user into it and they can send the private messages to the users. So it is obvious. Users should be able to have text chat that they can break into threads. Now it is explaining all the things again. So user can chat on different topics, on different things, and then they can divide into threads or into different sections or groups. Chat should be able to be archived indefinitely so users can reference past chats. So that point means that whenever there is a chat, user can archive it. They can put it in some safe folder so that whenever that chat is required, in fact we can get that chat. So it is kind of making some backup or putting it in some place where that chat remains the same, that remains safe. And then the next thing, functional requirement, then external interface requirements. Here it has not mentioned, but sometime we use some other interface requirements. For example, I say that whenever I am going to use this software, I need, for example, some browser or maybe some application, that if that application will be available, then I can interact with my chat program, right? Then functional requirements, then we have user interfaces. Number one, front end software, that the screens that will be seen by the user or used by the user. And it has also wrote down React Native, right? So we are getting the information about the tools, languages, and technology, that in which technology which thing will be created, right? So now backend software, .NET Core. So you do not know about, I know very well, very few of you would know about these technologies and tools, but majority does not know, but just feel like that these are the name of different tools with the help of which we can make front end and back end, right? So at this level, what I'm expecting from you is that, okay, write down Visual Studio, okay? Then database software, that means DBMS, database management system. So in order to create and manage the database, they are using the MySQL, right? MySQL is a software that helps to create the database and manage the database. So they will use that. LDAP connection, right? So in fact, LDAP connection is a tool with the help of which we can establish the connections. So in order to authenticate, right? So we make the LDAP connection, and then we can check, okay, I'm a valid user or not, I'm talking to a valid user or not. So in this way, it is talking about how we will interact with each other, how user will interact. Then hardware interfaces, right? So how will we run our project, how they will interact with the hardware. So now check both Mac machines and Windows operating, like Mac and Windows operating system, and their default web browser. Again, now it is describing that eChat can run on both Mac OS and Windows OS, right? And then the hardware would be iPhone, right? So iPhone is using, in fact, the Mac operating system, right? Yeah, iPhone operating system. And then Android phone, in fact, is a hardware, and it uses the Android operating system. And then it should be, in fact, some big heading like user interface or hardware interface. So non-functional requirements are like, my software would be efficient, like it would provide me the response in this much time. It will be secure, that is, my software will not allow the users to interrupt my chat, to get my chat. Then another thing can be, my software would be portable, it will run on different platforms. So now what I'm doing in non-functional requirements, in fact functional requirements are those requirements that describe about how it will work, but non-functional, in fact, are the requirements that are not related to the functionality but help the functionality, like security helps my software, authentication helps my software, efficiency makes my software better. So in this way, you will find a list of non-functional, reliable, available. There are so many terminologies, so you can define and describe every non-functional requirement that is related to your domain or your software. Then here we have the performance requirement. So now check. In fact, now I got it. I got it. This non-functional requirement is a big heading, and then as I said, there are so many non-functional requirements. So this would be, in fact, a big heading, and then the subheading would be performance requirement, as I called it with the name efficiency. How efficient is your software? So now check, you will write down, the application should load and be usable within 3 seconds. The application should update the interface or interaction within 2 seconds. So in fact, that is non-functional requirement. Functionality is to connect and chat with each other, but non-functional is how good performance would be. So now I am writing down again safety requirements. That means in fact there should not be loss of data. That means if I am saving some data in my chat or I am receiving some data, it must be saved. Security, again in fact that is non-functional requirement, that if somebody tries to get data from my database or from my app, he or she should be stopped. So that would be some security mechanism, not the functional requirement but non-functional. Software quality attributes, as I told you before, that normally we look for so many things for the quality. Number one, correctness, maintainability, usability, availability. So we have seen that if my application is running, it should be available for 24/7. That means 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That means every time my server should be available, my chat would be chat facility should be available. And similarly correctness, if I am sending some text to somebody and if I am chatting with somebody, so my chat should reach to the person to whom I am sending it, right? The application should never allow anyone to read message or discussions not intended for that person to whom I'm not sending. It should not go there. So correctness. Then maintainability, whenever there is some issue or problem, my software should be maintainable, the bugs can be fixed, so that should be there. Usability, again in quality, I told you we make a software in such a way that it must be easy to make or changes in it, to make any updation in it, extending the software, anything. So in fact the software quality attributes should be there, that whenever we need that software, it must be available, it must be correct, it must be maintainable. And usability, that means that in fact a software must be that much easy that whenever a user tries to use it, he must not need much knowledge. Rather he should be able to log in and then start chatting and everything. So that is usability. So in fact in this way you can see the different parts of the SRS, and I have explained them through with the help of this website. This is some website, and I found it interesting that he has given us some example. And now what I feel like, if when you are going to write down about these functional requirements, you will describe every module and its functionality, and then you will provide the use cases in it. I gave you the model of the use case, so you will make that use case in the tabular form or the format or the template. Then you will make a use case diagram, so that the functionality should be uh, visible with the help of those use cases and use case diagram. Similarly, when you will talk about the data requirement, there you will provide me the class diagram where I can see the variables and your member functions and everything and their relationship with each other. I taught you about the use cases and then use case diagram, and then I talked about the uh, class diagram. And the last thing you can add is the state transition diagram that we studied yesterday in the class. So in this way this document will be able to tell us all about the software that we are planning, that we are going to start. So before starting the product or project, in fact we make this SRS, so that the user or the customer, and they must be aware of what we are going to build. And our own designers and developers and testers, they must also know that what we want to produce. So in this way this document is very much important, and it plays a very important role whenever we are going to work on a project. What will I write in this document? I am bound to develop that thing. So if I do not develop, then the customer can sue me, he can take me to the court, or maybe he can apply me to put me in blacklist database so that I can never be approached by any customer. If they want to give me some work, they will simply check the blacklist database whether this company or this software house is good or is it blacklisted. So we try to avoid anything that we are not planning to develop. Whatever you are going to develop, only write those things so that your customer agrees on it, and if he wants to add something he will discuss. So always with the SRS we have got the option of negotiation. When we write down this document, before signing we negotiate. He tells us, no, 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 I don't want this, I want this, and we tell them, okay, we are making this functionality and not this. So we come to a situation where user and developer, they both feel like that we have won. So this is known as win-win situation, that is customer is happy as well as developer is happy. So now try to make this document, and I hope that inshallah this presentation or this clip will help you to make the SRS document. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.